So you try to put on a helmet.
Yeah, it makes helmet shopping a bitch.
It's fair.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on our Percentile Vice. It's me, Steve, sometimes Rick. You can find me on Twitter at RickStevensPI, and I'm joined by the rest of the Vice Squad. There's Emily. There's John. And tonight we are excited to be interviewing the Battlelords crew. And I'm going to kick it over to you guys. Tell us your names, call signs, a little bit about yourself, where people can find you. So who wants to start?
I usually start. I'll go ahead. My name is Tony. Around here, I go by the call sign either Executor or Executor. They call me both because apparently they're both appropriate. My job is to keep flogging everybody over here so they continue to move and work.
Nice. We need a flogger.
I volunteer.
All right. Who's next?
Go ahead, Dave.
All right. Dave, CDO. That's OCD in the proper alphabetical order. I'm the one who they send all the editing to because I'm the guy that looks at that and goes, you know, that's about 2 pixels to the left. And they look at me and go, you can tell? I'm like, you can't?
I used to work for you. I mean, not literally, but a person just like you. They could, from across the conference room, spot an extra space in a PowerPoint slide. It was quite annoying, but I'm sure you're a great guy.
I try to not be that person. So I spent a lot of time turning that off. But when I start doing this editing layout stuff, then I have to like turn it on, and then it's like on. People are like,
I did make an attempt at separating us by category and then putting everybody in alphabetical order because I've heard that about you. So I hope you appreciate that effort.
I appreciate it.
Kurt.
And I am Kurt, the Viking, as they call me. Only because after years of martial arts training with these two fine gentlemen and seeing how many times I could take a hit and smile about it, they decided that was the appropriate call sign. Also, I'm not exactly small, so that it tends to fit. I'm kind of like a bull in a china shop. I do most of the writing for the team, and as we talked about a little bit earlier, I am a nurse, so I bring the medical side to the Battlelords presentation.
Excellent. So yeah, I've read through the core book and the Quickstart. There's need for a lot of medical knowledge throughout that. We've taken the liberty of, in keeping with the theme, giving ourselves call signs. John, what's your call sign?
Goat.
You got a story behind that?
I just like goats. They're smooth.
And there's a goat on top of your microphone.
There is.
How about you, Emily?
John put me on the spot, and it was the only thing I could come up with.
Not.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But
funny.
it is what it's not funny. There we go.
I think it was technically in violation of the call sign protocols. I think typically somebody is supposed to give them to you based on anything. You can't really do it to yourself, so don't feel bad.
Okay. Yeah, that was really John's fault. What you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, so you get a new one.
Okay, thank you.
need to know.
When you earn it.
When I earn it.
When the rest of us know what it is, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
And you earn your call sign all the time. What is it?
It's Palmer. It's a reference to my love life.
Thanks, Dad. I really appreciate
Cindy
that.
Palmer. She lives 2 doors down.
Right.
We've just started dating.
Really appreciate knowing that
All
about
right.
you.
Enough of the weirdness.
I was going to say, sounds like a married man.
Twice married and now single. So,
And this is our intern.
I give great relationship advice. I can tell you exactly what not to do in any relationship. All right, cool. So, Battlelords. This is a really cool game, guys. I haven't had the pleasure of playing it yet, but I've spent quite a bit of time reading through the materials, and then got to watch I think it was the first ever actual play from Carrie and Crossroads Games crew. The last couple of weeks, it was really awesome. So it's a military sci-fi kind of thing. Tell us just generally about the Battlelords setting in the game.
Dave, you want to go?
Sure. I was just wondering if the dogs are going to go nuts here because there was some barking outside and there's something out there.
This is good. When our dog barks, we can blame it on Dave's dog.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, we got a lot. We got a Newf mix and we got a Pyrenees, so they're big dogs. Big dogs. So in terms of the background or setting, I like to tell people take a little bit of like Starship Troopers, throw in a dash of Fifth Element, a little bit of Serenity Firefly, a little bit of Out on the Fringe, maybe a little bit of exploration. And you've got a pretty good idea of the kinds of things that go on in Battlelords. Add in a little bit of corporate espionage, think like Ocean's 11 or maybe Mission Impossible. And you got a lot of ways to play the game, a lot of things to do. Everything you're doing, though, is in a world, or actually in a world, in a galaxy run by mega corporations. They're there to make money, and you're just a number. And they don't really believe in OSHA there. They just, you know what? I can get another person. I'm not going to put in that rail. Sorry.
As long as you got a hat box, you're good.
Exactly. Hat boxes are important.
Right. OSHA comes through with a clipboard with one item. Fully stocked hat boxes? Check.
Check.
It's cheaper that way.
That's right. So
That's only if they don't pay them off to say, you know what, you don't need to check. Just check the box. Here's your
Right.
hat.
pencil whip the one item checklist. That's great.
I wish OSHA was really like that.
So this game's been around for a while.
A day or two.
Yeah. So tell us about the history and progression, where it came from, how it originated, and what it's gone through and evolved through over the years.
Tony?
It originally started out as the brainchild of a gentleman known as Larry Sims, and he would curse me if I just called him a gentleman. He was a U.S. Army veteran, and the game was based on his experience while being in the Army in the 80s. So a lot of those same themes carry over into Battlelords. He ran a game store in Buffalo, New York, came up with the idea for Battlelords and wrote it up. Did that for about, I'm trying to think years, I can't remember years, but he did 3 editions of the game. And then he sold it to his art director and web designer, who helmed it for 17 years, I want to say. It was a long time. And when they got sort of exhausted for running it for that long, they were like, we're done. And they're like, we don't know what to do with it. And I rang these guys up and said, I have part of a plan.
How much of a plan?
It's like 17%. Yeah.
Good enough.
Yeah, I think
And,
that was
by the time we got a hold of it, it was already in its 6th edition.
Wow.
And it's 31 years old this year.
wow.
I think that's really neat because all 3 of us also basically were brought into TTRPGs by a fellow in the service named Larry.
It's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I didn't even know. Wow.
When I was reading it, that parallel kind of stuck out to me, and it was really cool. It kind of made me a little sentimental about old Grandpa Larry for a minute.
So let me tell a quick story, because I think there's a parallel back to the development of Battlelords. So my father, Larry, was he retired Air Force. So we moved here to Georgia. It was his last assignment. And I remember being, 13, 14 years old. And he carried me with him over to a buddy's house, on base housing. But in one of his rooms, he just had a big table set up. And it was Napoleonic miniatures. Big battle scenes, moving big squares of people around in that Napoleonic fashion. It was the most boring night I've ever spent because I didn't get to touch them. I didn't get to play with them. It was just stand there and watch. It's going to be cool.
Right.
It wasn't for a 13-year-old. But soon after that, I remember my father, that was kind of a springboard for him into discovering the world of gaming in general and then role-playing. So I played Dungeons and Dragons when I was like in 1978.
Yeah.
It was the first time I played, and my father ran the scenario, young kid. He ran the Palace of the Vampire Queen. And I was so literally scared about playing this game that the first thing my character did was go into town and buy neck armor because we were going to be going up against vampires. I went and bought special neck armor. Anyway, yeah, you're like, when is this going to come back around to Battlelords? Wasn't at the beginning now a pretty tactical game? Was it mostly about the battle, and it's now growing into more of role playing along with it?
I want to say it's always been 50-50. I mean, there are some great characters, and there's always been great species and interactions to have with those characters. And there's a lot of themes that are based in role playing, but at the same respect, the original version of the game was very tactical. I mean, Larry was an army guy, and if you did stupid stuff like charge the gun emplacement, it wasn't going to go well for you.
Thus the need for the hat box.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so as we track the history of the game, we get closer to present day. You guys are have developed, and if I'm right here, about to do a Kickstarter for a Savage World edition of this game. Tell us a little bit about that process and how it's going.
Yeah, we 2017 we successfully kickstarted the 7th edition of what we call Classic Battlelords, which is a natural extension from the 6th edition, and we like it. We think it's very popular, but it, as you mentioned, is tactical, and there was some demand from a lot of the fans for something that was a little more, I don't want to say rules light, maybe rules lighter. And so we looked around for different options and how to accomplish that. And after checking out different systems, we eventually decided on Savage Worlds and doing an adaptation of the Battlelords setting for Savage Worlds.
Awesome. So you guys have mentioned a couple things. I want to kind of get into the themes of this particular game, but I'm just real quickly going to hit Savage Worlds. Don't need to do a whole lot because we've done a couple interviews with Savage World game creators, so most of our audience knows this. But generally speaking, the mechanics are built around differing die sizes that are applied to your abilities to do things. And the higher the die size, the better you are at it. And that's generally how the mechanics go. And then for character creation, there's some different races, but most of the flavor of the characters is kind of built by making a combination of hindrances and edges, things that work against you and the things that would work for you. That's one of the things people like about Savage World is that you're not limited to a class system as such, but you can use those different hindrances and edges to build the thing that's in your mind.
Right.
So that's just generally, and that's as much as I'm going to say about the Savage World rule set. But let's talk about Battlelords. So one of the things I found really helpful in the game is near the beginning, you talk about the 5 main themes that we would see running throughout the game. The grunt in the trenches, speciesism and stereotyping and overcoming those kind of things, runaway capitalism, making it big. Every character's trying to get to something, and the one I like the most, of course, is the dark humor aspect of it. So tell me a little bit about those themes. Let's talk through them. So I think one of the biggest overriding things, because you've got so much depth and detail in there on the species, is probably the speciesism and overcoming those kind of stereotypes. Tell us how all that worked.
Well, I'll take this one because I kind of wrote up those descriptions in that. So originally when Larry created it, he wanted strife between the different groups because as you expect, when you throw a bunch of people into the military, it doesn't matter what race they are, it doesn't matter what sex they are, they got to get along to get the job done during the mission. Even if they can't stand each other later, they got to do it right now. So you got to at least trust the guy at your back or the gal at your back that they're going to cover for you and make sure you don't get shot from behind. because they know you're doing the same thing for them. So that was kind of what he wanted to build into it. And that was one of the things that we really liked about the system, was that it had all these different groups that couldn't stand each other. And then they're thrust in this situation where it's a life or death situation, and they have to work together as a team. And so that's kind of the whole premise on the different species, is that they have to work in this gigantic alliance to defend themselves against different threats, even if they can't stand or actually hate each other, like the Scissorak and the Ram, the Pythonians. They can't stand each other. Well, a lot of times if they're not in a situation where they have to work together, they either won't or they'll be at each other's throats. Multiple of the species have gone to war against each other at one point. And the only reason they're in the alliance together is because kind of they were forced to. They saw what was coming and decided that was a worse threat than the Ram, the Pythons, the Eridani, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of something we wanted to carry on in both classic Battlelords and the Savage Worlds comparison. Is basically you've got all these people that can't really stand each other, put them together and see how things work.
Sounds like my office. So you guys have got a ton of different species in the book, which from a guy who just loves making characters, that kind of depth is really cool.
Yeah.
And they're well fleshed out too. They're not just like, oh, let's throw this in so there's an extra one. You've actually got a lot of good motivations and backstories to fill everything out. You can take that and make something really cool with it.
So if I was to put you on the spot, Dave, what's your favorite species in Battlelords?
I was going to tack on what John was saying. And part of the goal was to really give each one an archetype, so that way somebody who's new to the game could kind of pick species and have an idea of what they typically do. And you don't have to play to that archetype, and it's kind of fun to actually play against type. So you can have, like, we had one guy who was a genius ram that was an engineer, and like, so who's managing the engines for this ship? And everyone's just kind of like, how do I get off this ship?
Right.
So, species I enjoy. Generally, I like the Mitakans just because of the energy controlling aspect. That's always been fun. So I like playing in that space, and because they're smaller, they get cheaper armor, and so that I'm the one who hauls people out of combat. It's like, that's fine. I'm gonna grab you and I'll drag you back. He'll patch you up.
Nice. So Tony, you had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks to watch some folks do an actual play of it. So I know we saw last night some of that speciesism and overcoming stereotype theme play right through there. What was it like as being part of the Battlelords brain trust to see that happen, and how do you think they did it at playing out that particular theme?
Well, we've been watching people play Battlelords for almost 30 years now. I think Carrie and Gru did a great job with the game and the speciesism aspect of the game. And it's if you can, like Kurt was saying, it's one of our favorite aspects of the game. What appeals to me is, unlike Dungeons and Dragons, where you have a potentially evil thief in the group who may backstab you at any moment, you can still hate each other, but you're all going to have to cooperate, or else
Right.
everybody in the group's going to die. And I think they showcased that perfectly. The Ram and the Scissorak were arguing, and the Fop basically mediated between them and said, we'll settle this later. I think her method of settling it later was Jello wrestling, which is a very Fott and or Orion thing to do. But yeah, I think they did a great job, and that was a good example of that in action.
So, Kurt, you done most of the writing. Which species was the funnest to write up?
Well, most of the old species from the original books were already pretty set, so I had to just kind of coalesce all the information and put it in there. But the Rosette we changed from an earlier version. We didn't like kind of their description, so we changed those around. So that was a little fun. But the Keen were completely new. So I got to write everything on that and put that all together. So that is probably one of my favorites on it, because I got to design their entire species, their entire way of living, down to, what their government's like, how they interact with each other, that kind of stuff. So that was kind of fun. And even better, Tony's a biology major in the background. So I literally was going, hey, I know this works this way, but is there anything on planet Earth that reproduces like this? And he's like, well, yeah, this great. That it's a viable option. I can go that route. And so it really made it more fun, because I got to use the science and put it all together and make it from the bottom up. So
one of the things I really liked in the book, I just found it. I wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking out of turn, but you have put this wonderful chart matrix in there with each of the species listed in the rows and each of them listed in the columns. So you can literally, as a player, look and say, I am this species. How does this species typically interact with another? Which is cool in and of itself. But what I found particularly amusing was seeing that there were some species that Species A absolutely despises Species B. But Species B, their review of the other one is tolerant. They tolerate them. It was very one-sided in some of those relationships. And I thought that would be a blast to role play as a group of adventurers.
John's just over here loathing your very presence, and you're like, hey, bud.
Right. That's typically happens.
That is typically how it happens.
Yeah, I mean, because I would think, and maybe it's just me and I'm so one-dimensional, but I would think it would be real easy to make, well, these guys hate these guys, so therefore these guys hate them back. But that's not always true, is it?
Nope. That was one of the fun parts of that aspect of, the Midzakans are just like, you're all here to keep us from getting destroyed.
Right.
So we will tolerate and put up with you, all of you, except the Chitillion. We really don't like you.
So, Emily, what do you think about, there's, I don't know, I want to say close to 15 or 20 different races in the book?
I think there's about 14.
So 14 different races. Each one of them in the book has got, the physical characteristics. This is what society is like. This is kind of like the political aspect is like. There's a full blow-up on all of these things. You love the role-playing aspect of games. How do you think that would play into the parts of gaming you love?
I think I would definitely print out the chart. I would have it like on deck, like taped to my computer. But also, like, one of my favorite things to do is building characters, especially characters that are based off like pop culture references. So to have 14 different races to build off of, because that's usually one of the biggest constraints, is like, how many times can I use human just because I can't think of any other race? But having that really helps you kind of broaden those spectrums. And I was thinking about that graph thing, that it's really cool because, like, especially you're talking about a lot of political intrigue and things like that. When you get into that politicalness of things, things can be one-sided for one race. They can feel very much oppressed by another race, while the other race is like, that's just who they are. They're the people that we'd have to do this. So it was very cool. But I definitely think that as a person who likes to create characters and really get into role play, having all of that information of how these people tie together and how they express themselves to one another is super helpful and super great to, like, really get into the meat and bones of what those races are, not just kind of that surface level understanding.
You're talking a lot, and I know every character would be a thought, and you'd just be like, okay, let's Brendan Fraser from the Mummy as a thought.
It could be Evie O'Connell from the Mummy as a thought.
Now we have a species that is a literal walking pop culture reference, the Orions, that are just party animals. They do whatever's popular, right down to species-wide plastic surgery to look like whatever the cool in species is this year. They basically look like humans now because they think humans are cool.
Nice.
Yeah. The cool thing about building characters in Battlelords, it takes a while, and the goal is to really make things in a position from a character sheet perspective where you've got all the rules in front of you. You really don't have to go look anything up at that point. But from a building characters perspective, the cool part is we have these, we call them the I was just growing up table. And so you have this character concept in mind, and you start building it out, you start picking out what you want, and then you roll in these tables and they throw in random stuff that you suddenly have to like fit in.
Right.
You get a very organic kind of a switch on your idea. It's like, well, I was going down this path and then I had to take this curveball and fit it in somehow.
Because we don't get to choose all of our childhood, do we?
No.
Right? Some of us are just we're dealt a set of cards, and that's what we got to play. I love that concept.
The fought with the Fentari lover.
Right.
He's fast enough to get away.
I love that. I love how so many other like different TTRPGs are getting into that now, where we just don't have these quintessential heroes. They have flaws that don't necessarily make you better. Sometimes they just make you worse, and it's really great for the role play side.
Yeah. So that leads me to a question about edges and hindrances, but I want to stick to my path here.
Okay, stick to your plan.
I'll jump all over the place with it. So, all right. First of all, I love the vast variety of species and the interplay between them and the amount of depth you put behind each one, because it definitely builds out the role play ability of all those things, and then the intra-party conflict that can go on. You know, it would have been real easy to make this game. You know, we talk about speciesism and stereotypes, and just having this clear cut. Those are bad guys and those are good guys, and so let's deal with it. But it's down into the player character level, so within a party, and it gets back to what you were saying about life in the military, right? You're going to meet people from every walk of life in all the corners of the U.S. when you get into the military here, and you just have to learn to deal with things and people and types that you never had to before. Really like that you didn't stay at a surface level and it's just the us against them things, but put it into the party as a whole. So, all right, so let's get into the fun stuff. Not that wasn't fun, but the thing that really makes this thing rock is the combat, the armor, the weapons. I mean, this is some serious stuff. This is not your run-of-the-mill role-playing combat game. You guys, this game is spiced up. Tell us a little bit about the concept of the over-the-top combat that goes on in it.
Yes, the combat system really has it's like the arms race on steroids, right? One of the things in the 80s was a big thing was the arms race between the U.S. and Russia. And I think Larry drew some inspiration from that by having the idea of, well, if you have all these different mercenaries running around, you'd have the same kind of a thing. There's all these different defenses that you can get, and there's all these different ways of getting around the defenses. And it's just a question of what are you going to pick? And so you then start to work as a team. This is one of the places where it reinforces teamwork. If you all have the same kind of a gun, if you run into somebody that has the best defense against that, you're in trouble. So it encourages people to really think about their choices of things. And the game has a bit of almost like a Magic the Gathering where this and that work really well together in it. So you start to find out that, gosh, these two things work really well together. So you shoot that person first, I'll finish them off. You go to the next person, I'll finish them off. And then you can teamwork things.
John, you love combat. What did you think when you read through this the source book and the Quickstart on the weapons choices out there?
There's a ton of weapons choices, a ton of armor choices. I love that the size of the individual species kind of ties into the armor that they can wear. So you kind of make some choices there. You know, do I want to spend more money for the armor, or do I want to just know I'm not going to wear the armor? So, like, the balancing of it, even though it's got to be tough with so much going into it, it seems like it's there enough for a group to kind of hash it out themselves if there's any issues. And one thing I remember from the interview with the AARPG guys is that you pretty much said that somebody got a big ship, and you kind of had to come up with the rules as you went for the big ships. And it's really kind of amazing. And I kind of wish I had been there to see all that happening, because it's very interesting to watch the thought processes and the back and forth on things like that. Is there
Yeah,
anything you think you would go back and change if you had the chance on that?
I don't know that I would change something, but I thought I could share a little bit about the of insight into kind of how we approach that.
Sure.
So when we were looking at things we wanted to do, one of the big things we saw that was missing in the prior editions was, for a space game, there was no spaceships you could really play and no way to integrate that with what was going on. It was kind of this little bolt-on thing that you could kind of sort of make up as you go along, but it really didn't have an integrated thing. And as we talked through things, one of the things we quickly settled on was, we want the game to focus on the players, not the toys. So everything's around the people and making sure that everyone is a person, whether they're a Fott, a Fentari, or whatever, they're a person, right? And they're taking actions with that character that make sense in the context of that character. So when we started building up spacecraft, we're like, okay, so we've got to keep a focus on the players. So it's going to have to be kind of a station focus, right? If I'm in the con, I'm driving the ship, I'm the pilot. If I'm at navigation, if I'm in a gunnery chair, what is my role supporting the ship? So that helped us kind of frame out what we wanted to do. We started kind of playing around with ideas there. And then from a combat perspective, part of it was like, well, how do we keep the science in the science fiction? So I was like, well, relative frame of reference, kind of some inspiration from Star Wars. The inspiration George Lucas drew to highlight the scene where they're escaping from the Death Star, he had all these things coming from the point of view of the Millennium Falcon, right? All these ships are coming in, attacking, and they had to fight them off. Well, that's basically what was going on in World War II fighter pilot. They would come in and they would attack the bombers who were going slower. So the point of reference is now, okay, well, I've got this slower ship, whichever one it is, that's the point of reference that everything's based off of. And so that's kind of how we started to grow it all out. We wanted to feel like almost like a Caribbean kind of a feel, right? Back in the pirate days of the Caribbean, you were a long way from anything. If you got stuck, you were stuck.
Yeah.
There's no, hey, let me call AAA. They'll be out here in a couple hours.
Right.
No, it's like, why did you burn all the rum? Nobody's going to see it. We could have at least drank it.
Right. Why is the rum gone?
But why is the rum gone? So, that absolute desolation and distance from everything. So ships are incredibly valuable. And so there's a real strong incentive. You don't want to blow those up because they're your spare parts. It's like the rum. You don't burn the rum.
Right. So the station-based nature of how you would run ship to ship or vehicle to vehicle combat, I'd like to dive into that a little bit, because a couple of years ago we really wanted to kind of get into a pirate adventure, and so did some digging around, started thinking about making my own mechanics, then found a 5th edition D&D book that had some of it in there, but it always felt kind of clunky to me, that it didn't feel real. It was like the ship had a turn, and then the people each had a turn, and the sequence in which that happened could make it either seem very real and believable, or very unreal and unbelievable. So how did you work through those mechanics of I understand what you're saying about, that frame of reference, but in the overall picture of a battle that's going on, how did you just keep it looking like a thing instead of a bunch of little things that we're trying hard but failing at bringing together?
Yeah, so to bring it together, it's really then how do the players' decisions and choices influence what's going on either at a ship level or an inside the ship level. At the end of the day, the ship isn't doing the things. The people are doing the things.
Right.
And then, because I'm older than Dirt was really cool, by the way. When it came along, it got a lot easier to grow vegetables.
Dirt's my little brother, so be careful with the age references.
Oh, I'm going to tell him.
So I drew a little bit of inspiration from an old game by FASO where they had a Starfleet starship, kind of a thing going on where you had stations. You had somebody who was engineering, you had somebody who was manning the phasers and photon torpedoes and that kind of a thing. And so it was like, okay, well, we know we want stations. There was this kind of a gameplay. So what if we had each person have a set of actions they can take in addition to the normal actions that they can always take? What if we, because you're at this station, you can decide to turn the ship, accelerate the ship, or decelerate the ship. And if you're in engineering, well, maybe you can affect the shields. You can try to help repair the shields. You can help try to give extra power to weapons or extra power to the engines.
Or,
And
damn it, Scotty, I need 50% more power or we're all dead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And
Or you
because
go
it's,
with
because
Hey,
it's
guys.
Battlelords, and we encourage boarding actions, like Dave said, the ships are a valuable asset. You have to, sometimes there's this difficult choice of, do I turn the ship or do I turn and shoot at that boarder who just ran onto the bridge?
Right.
ship face. Ship
Yes.
face.
The reference I kind of used to keep it straight was, Battlelords is about armored infantry combat. And when we started looking at the ship as just a big suit of armor with more than one occupant, it sort of worked itself out at that point.
Fell into place then. Huh?
Yeah.
Kurt, did you have something a minute ago? I think you started to jump in and there's
No. Tony kind of covered that on me as far as that goes, because usually, like you said, we like to focus on the players. So, and if that boarding action that they just did happened to, vent half your atmosphere, you may have other problems as well, like, getting on your suit or, that kind of stuff, wear your mag boots on, all that kind of thing. So, there's a lot of things involved with it. So it literally is, the intent is to keep everything focused on those individuals. They've got to be doing something pretty much all the time.
So, John, it sounds like they've worked through the thing I found the most dissatisfying about ship-to-ship combat when we tried it. What do you think?
Well, I think a lot of it was we almost unintentionally busted it, and it was because the
Was
combat,
it almost busted or it was almost unintentionally? Because we did bust it.
We
it was
busted it.
almost unintentional. I think Tim had the idea. That's our brother-in-law, my brother-in-law.
My brother.
Tim had the idea that, hey, why not do it this way? And he was right. It was the best way to do it, but it also led to it being fairly boring because
in very military fashion, Tim is the kind of guy that if I know all the rules, I can play the game better than you. And so he quickly figured out how to just break the system so that his ship was always going to win. But
Yeah.
anyway, we digress, but that was a good memory.
I think what they were saying about which I was saying about how you think of the ship as a outside armor for the entire group. I think that's the linchpin, because when we were playing, we considered the ship a separate being and we were just doing things on top of it. But if we had considered like the ship as, and we had operated it as such, I think it would have probably worked better. I think that's a really good way to think of it, is that ship is the armor that's protecting all of you, and what you're doing inside of it, whether it's moving the legs or the arms, is all has to work together towards one goal. I think that's really the linchpin there.
agreed.
The ship is a tool. It's
Exactly.
just a tool.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're
Otherwise, you end up with like spaceship to spaceship combat, and then it's like you guys are. There's no characters interactions at that point.
Right.
There's no magic there. It's all, well, we shoot it, it shoots us. We shoot it, it shoots us.
It can be cool, but it's better for a system that's designed specifically for that,
Correct.
where you
Didn't spend 3 hours making a character that's now null and void because the
you
ship's doing
spend
it all.
3 hours
We'll
setting
just
up a
watch
map.
the pilot make checks.
Yeah.
we don't want that.
Yeah.
all right. So,
I was going to say we applied the same kind of thought process to vehicles too. So when you start looking at the cars and the trucks and stuff like that in there, it's the same kind of setup as you have somebody playing with the ignition to try to get that power plant to put a little bit more out while you're driving, whereas the ram hanging out the back window shooting with this.
right.
He's
So,
kicking me. Stop. Hard to drive.
all right. So, really powerful weapons balanced by really good armor. And so in just normal Savage Worlds, right? If you've got a toughness, which loosely can be related to your armor class, loosely. And then if you have armor, you pile that on top of it. So you have that general mechanic. Then you also have this absorption.
I fucking love the absorption.
Yeah, would you talk through that? Because I think it's one of the best aspects of the combat mechanics in your game.
Yeah, Battlelords is, like I said, always been about armored infantry combat. And by armor, I mean personnel armor, not tanks. And one of the things that we wanted to port from classic Battlelords to Savage Battlelords was the way armor works and the way armor and weapons interact. And one of those aspects is that in Battlelords, armor really has a couple major elements. There's the hard outer shell, which in Savage Worlds would be your armor score, but it also has this padding, and the padding reacts to impacts. It helps absorb impacts. It reacts to temperature changes. It's an insulator, so it keeps you from getting electrocuted. But as you use it up. It's ablative. It gets consumed as it's taking damage. So how it works in Savage Worlds, Savage Battlelords, if you will, is that your armor, in addition to your character's toughness, augments that toughness with a bonus. So you get even tougher when you're in the armor. And every time you would take a wound, the armor's absorption suffers that wound instead of your character. But and just like your character, you can only take so many wounds and then you're done. That armor can only take so many hits before you're out of absorption. And once it's out of absorption, you're out of all that squishy padding stuff to take those hits, you lose that toughness bonus. So things quickly go south at that point. So that's how we replicated sort of that ablative aspect of Battlelords armor, where your armor is taking wounds for you, but when it's out of wounds to take, it doesn't work real well after that.
Yeah, reading through it and then watching some play of it, I could see as a player feeling damn near invincible.
Right up
until the point where that you felt completely vulnerable.
Right. It's a sheer drop.
Yeah.
It's just a cliff, and it was really cool. And it made for, I think, that kind of gritty trenches feel that was one of the themes for the book, for the game, the grunt in the trenches, right? If your armor was just always your armor, and
there wouldn't be much consequence.
Right.
I feel like it's very satisfying that even if you can't get through the armor, even if you can't get through the toughness of everything, you can still damage it. It's not a lost turn. You have done something.
Right.
And sometimes it's nice to be like, yes, I did something.
Yay.
And it's
and
something.
Like Dave was saying, there are weapon systems that find ways to do an end run around particular aspects of that armor. There's some weapon systems that ignore the armor value. There's some weapon systems that ignore the absorption. There's some weapon systems that take advantage of environmental weaknesses that armor may have. And even when you've lost that absorption, you still have the armor's armor value, and you still have any environmental resistances it may possess. But that part of finding a way around that armor is maybe not necessarily bashing through it, but maybe find a weak spot, a weapon that it's vulnerable to.
So it kind of encourages you to diversify your team and having those people with the different weapons and loadouts and things like that make you more effective against multiple.
It's all a big chess match, right?
It's literally chess.
where are
Face
the
damage.
Yeah, it also encourages players to really get creative about things. So one of the scenarios that I had run previous edition of Battlelords, traditional Battlelords, they ran up against a robot, and this guy had a laser, and there was no way he was getting through the outer armor. And she's like, wait a second, it's got a gun, right? Can I shoot down the barrel of the gun? I'm like, well, you're particularly good. Not sure if that's a good idea, but can you do it? Yes. And he's like, I think I'm going to do that. And I was like, are you sure you want to do that? And I was like, yeah. So the first security robot they run into, he managed to hit it, and it sets off one of the other things we have in this game, and it's carried through into Battlelords Savage Worlds, is the idea of malfunctions. things can go horribly wrong. So he managed to get a malfunction of that gun, and that gun's malfunction was bad, but not horribly bad. It blew up the robot, and they're like, yay, we beat up a robot. I did something great. They go to the other side of the security gate, and another robot pops out, and he's like, I got this. I know exactly what to do.
I figured it out.
Yeah, he hits that barrel, he shoots right down there, gets the perfect shot down that, and gets the worst crit you can get that doesn't give you any time to run. Him and his buddy were vaporized. They
Literal
were gone.
backfire.
The next row back, then they'd spread out even just because they thought there was a chance of explosion. The next row over was also dead, but they were at least still there.
Dead, waiting on Hatbox.
Right.
Waiting for the Zen to be woke up. The Zen was unconscious, and the Mutsakan crawled over and was like, ugh.
To explain the hat box, I don't know if we've covered what that is.
I don't think
So I was about to go there. So let me
please
prep
do.
it up
Go
a little
ahead.
bit, and then I'm going to throw it to you for talking about the Hatbox. So you got these insanely powerful weapons, really strong armor, battling things out, and then over time, armor on both sides of a battle is just going to start kind of coming down, and it gets to this. People are going to die in this game. It is brutal in combat, but it's a role-playing game, so nobody wants to spend 3 hours on it. Weaving the sci-fi into that, how would you in a role-playing game add some longevity to characters? I just thought this was a brilliant maneuver, and I really loved reading about it. So tell us, what's a Hatbox?
I'll let Kurt answer that. But I just wanted to add that one of the things that we've done, speaking of how gritty it can get, is we've taken the injury table from Savage Worlds and we've poured it over the critical hit table from classic Battlelords, which represents military, basically battlefield injuries. So some of the injuries your character can suffer are grievous, but well described. I'll leave it at that. But what happens if you get killed? Kurt, I'll let you take that.
Well, we've got a plethora of medical equipment, everything ranging from the lovely Hatbox and the military's Save the Head initiative, which is, you can't have a sci-fi game without having cryogenics. So basically the Hatbox is something you place on top of a dead or dying soldier's head when you can't get him back into the battle quick enough. And it envelops the head, cuts it off at the neck, and then injects a cryo solution into the head. So literally, because it's easier to carry a head back than the body, you just cut off their head and carry it with a handy-dandy carrying case. So if you see your medic come up and he's like, you're missing your legs, you're getting the Hatbox.
Damn it.
So it is both a love-hate relationship with the infantry because they know they'll wake up with a new body. But, that's the other part. They're going to wake up with a new body. All that expensive cyberware they paid for is going to be gone. And they're probably going to have another 6 to 8 months, if not 8 years, added to their contract.
I love the writing in the book that suggested that in this particular universe, in this particular time frame, that is the backstory from the popular saying, don't lose your head.
Yes.
Whatever you do, don't lose your head.
Don't lose your head. Because they can grow you a whole new body. They can put you a cybernetic body.
They can't do it the other way around.
Right.
Yeah. You just can't replace that brain. So we definitely want to save the head.
And then say, not a question of if you're going to die or when, but how often and if you can afford to come back.
Right.
Yes. That's
monetized death.
Yep.
It's a very good tie-in with the whole corporate theme.
Right.
That as long as the corporation can keep getting money off of you, as long as you're still making the money, you don't get to rest yet. We're going to put you in the Hatbox, bring you back, and put you back out.
It's all an economic decision. Right. The cost of regenerating your body can be easily recouped by the work you're going to do for the corporation.
That's right. We'll offset the cost of the regeneration by adding another 1 year to the term of your contract. You're welcome.
Right.
And you've
Simple
got a new
business.
body.
You can pick up a nice postcard at the company store.
You also explained the crawler, Kurt.
Oh, yes. So for Classic Battlelords, we're putting out another book as well called Fully Armored. And so in addition to the plethora of equipment that we already have in the main core rule book, this increases it. So we have something that was created by the Fintari Reuse, Recycle, and Repurpose company that is called the Crawler, and it is a mobile battlefield auto dock, basically, and it looks like a giant slug. So it crawls around the battlefield, sucks you in, as well as other dead bodies, and it will return you to 95% combat efficiency. It uses other dead bodies as organic material to rebuild. Same thing with their cyberware and equipment on them, because everything is repurposed.
Gross.
So this weird slug-like creature swallows you up.
Yep.
Other dead bodies as parts.
Spare parts.
And then
Poops you out.
shits you out at 95%.
Guaranteed
But
95%.
Guaranteed
I think-
95% higher combat efficiency.
I think that 5% is just the mental toll of having to go through the digestive tract of the slug.
Yeah, sometimes one leg might be a little shorter than the other.
Well, and funny you should mention the psychological toll, because to get you back to at 95% combat efficiency, they can't use anesthetic.
Oh.
So they just paralyze you. You feel everything.
That's so dark.
Yeah, they're
But don't worry, there's a soothing robotic voice that talks you through the
This
whole
is very,
process.
very much like Portal. Like, you know, we're going to test on you. It's going to hurt, but don't worry, we're going to learn a lot.
So, Tony, Dave,
See, you're
Kurt,
missing a leg. That's okay. We'll just cut it off. You'll feel a little pinch, but that's all right. It's coming off. It's all gone now.
It's all
And hey, here's a little accident. We took the other leg too by accident. That's okay. We can put it back on. You'll just feel a little pinch and put that right back on, and it's a great thing. It's a good thing. You'll be fine.
So, Tony, Dave, Kurt, there's a darkness to you guys that's not easily seen behind those smiling faces, but it's starting
it's
to come
slowly
up.
showing through. And I
Because
like
that was a choice. That was a choice you guys made. You felt everything while that was happening. Right? You could have gone the other way.
Nope.
Well,
You don't want to get back out on the battlefield groggy from anesthetic. You're just going to get shot again.
That's right.
Yeah.
exactly.
You can make
if we
all the
used anesthetic, we
rationalizations.
could have only guaranteed 94%.
Well, I did say I'm a nurse, right?
Right. I feel like now, like whenever you play it, if you're like mostly, awake, but you see the thing coming for you, you start pleading like the Black Knight and Monty Python. It's just a flesh wound. It's fine. You're like begging. I'm good. I do not need medical attention. I am fine. And you got to roll for persuasion to persuade this thing to leave you alone.
Soldier, we have a report. You used a grenade on the crawler. We're going to take that out of your salary.
Out of your pay.
I guarantee you at some point somebody has used a grenade on the crawler.
I am not going in that thing.
Yeah, we even included a short story in the new one about the effects of the crawler.
Nice.
You're just proving my dark
Right.
comment.
Well, dark humor is one of the elements.
is.
It
one of the
is.
thematic elements of the game.
It is. And one of the other ones, I'm going to kind of take the grunt in the trenches and the making it big kind of thing here, kind of run them together or talk about how both of these touch it. So in the combat thing, you talked about the injury tables and how bad those can get. And we talked about the hat box, but one of the things I thought that was really cool was aggression checks and the combat stress table, because not necessarily, though possibly, but not necessarily physical things that would happen to the character, but these mental, psychological, mood types of things that could happen to a character that make for some incredible role play. That was well demonstrated in Carrie's playthrough the other day. But tell me about those, the stress table, the aggression checks, those kind of things.
So in Battlelords, one of the things that happens both in Classic Battlelords and Savage Battlelords is that you can have characters either panic or go on the other end and go berserk. And there's an even higher level of berserk where you essentially go suicidally berserk, and you have no concern for your own safety at that point. And how we represent that in Savage Battlelords is the combat stress table. And if you ever flub a spirit roll, you have to roll on the combat stress table to figure out if you panic or if you freak out. And there are certain species in Battlelords that are naturally aggressive, and they are going to be more on the freak out and start killing things side of that equation. So you have to be cognizant of the fact that, yeah, the Chatalian may freak out and run off, which is bad for your group, but the Ram Python may freak out and start killing anything that moves, be it friend or foe. And you don't want to be the person to talk the Ram Python down, because if you fail talking them down, they're just going to squish you. So yeah, that's how we represent that. But yeah, that's one of the elements of the different species in the game, is some of them are a little on the aggressive side, and you have to be aware of when you roll on that combat stress table, or if you have to roll on it, that things could go bad. You may just decide that you're going to, charge the gun emplacement because it's made you mad because it shot you, or that you're going to, kill anything that moves until you get tired of doing that, and hopefully your friends will still be standing.
And on top of that, quirks like the Scissorax like blood. They're prey driven, and so bleeding.
So Emily, I know when we play Call of Cthulhu, you got a real kick out of some of the results of loss of sanity. And basically your character is driven to do something, and you've got to role play that.
It's my favorite.
And the role play opportunities with this combat stress table are just out there. What do you think?
Well, I think we've notated that I have zero problem as a person for my character to try to kill your characters. Right. Zero qualms with that. And I absolutely love role playing when somebody snaps. It's possibly my favorite thing to do. I don't know why. It's just so visceral, and you just really can lean into things you've talked about previously in the game that have just resurfaced. I absolutely love that kind of stuff, because it's not always going to be, hey, let's go for it. No, sometimes it's going to be real, and it's going to be gritty, and it's going to be dark. And I really like that. And it kind of mirrors the fact that, this takes a toll on your mental capacity, and depending on your species or your backstory may have an impact on how much it's going to affect you. I really like that. I think that for me, just somebody who likes to go ballistic on you guys around this table, it'd be really fun. I'd really enjoy that.
We had a really long payoff kind of a thing that you were talking about. You get a payoff. So I was playing a Scissorax, which is basically like a big tiger. And one of the other guys was playing a fought, big rabbit. And so there's this constant joke. Do I get to eat him yet? He got hit. He got hurt. That lets me eat him, right?
Right.
And it's this running joke for a year. And then we get into the situation where he gets abducted and gets controlled by the bad guy. They put in implants in him that are basically making him do all kinds of things. We go to rescue him. We find him. We open the door. He's got a gun in his hand. He's turning to us, and he says, "Shoot!" I nail him. It's like, ah!
Right.
Like, well, you only shot me once, right? No. Full auto.
Full on.
Long payoff.
That's the long con.
But
You
sometimes
it's
you
on
have
tape.
to.
I got it. He told me to shoot him. No black mark. He told me to.
Sometimes it takes a long time to give, but you have to have a really good dinner every now and then.
Yeah.
Right.
So stew for dinner, sir.
What I like about them, one is, the tie back to just reality, right? This game was created by a military veteran who knew what it was like and tried to help create some of that atmosphere, right? So there is that tie back to realism that sometimes in those situations, a soldier might just go a little left, right? The other thing that I like about it is, so that's the gritty and the trenches thing, but I wanted to make that tie to that other theme, and that is everybody's trying to make it big. You guys make the point in the book several times that, hey, you're well equipped, not necessarily well trained, right? There's a bunch of great guns and stuff, but maybe you're not the best at things yet, right? So when you have these combat stress tables or these reactions that happen to you, you get some serious pluses and some serious minuses at the same time. Like, oh yeah, you just went berserk. You're going to be +4 on your strength, and you're going to hit with these kind of benefits. But oh, by the way, your toughness just dropped by 4. I forget what the exact combo there is, but it's like you're a badass, but you really don't care about getting shot. Just the combination of you're not necessarily well trained, and then adding in that combat stress, I could just see some really great moments in games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that trade-off of, you're going to be a badass, but you're leaving yourself mighty vulnerable. You're not paying attention. You're running headlong into things you shouldn't be. So, yeah, I like that a lot.
The nice side on my part was that those are pretty much pulled straight out of the standard Berserk feat rules from Savage Worlds. So there was not a lot of tweaking done there. So anybody familiar with the standard Berserk rules in Savage Worlds will know that. The only thing we changed is there are some feats that we've added that make it, or edges rather, that make it more or less likely for you to go berserk. Or there are some other edges that make you proficient at talking people down. And that's another option, is you do now have the option to try and talk somebody down from that state. So there are some additional rules, but it's pretty much the standard berserk edge from Savage Worlds.
Yeah, it just fits so well with this setting and the world that is created in this book. So let's talk a little bit about the socio-political, cultural aspect of the game, right? Huge mega corporations that are pseudo governments, or at least as powerful as the governments, or are controlling the governments. So, that the other theme for the game that you had was runaway capital. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So you got a situation where you've got an existential threat to a galactic spanning civilization comprised of multiple species. So the government's really focused on how do we spread out so that we can survive this. And we're not going to spend a lot of energy telling corporations what they can or can't do, because we're too busy trying to figure out if we're going to. I don't care if they're abusive right now, if it means we manage to survive. Right. And you've got companies who are like, hey, I smell loophole. I've got more profits coming. Right. So they're busy trying to churn out equipment that they can sell to the military. They're trying to build out new planets that they can exploit. They're trying to move people to exploit those materials that they can get, build out new civilization spaces that people can live in, grow more foods they can sell to the army. So they're looking at every way they can profitize this 6 ways from Sunday. And everyone that's running around in here, you are either directly working for one of those corporations, or your life is basically defined by those corporations for you, one way or the other. So you can kind of be out on the fringe trying to do your own thing. But even they're such a big player, you're kind of trying to play in the spaces between boulders.
Right.
And everything you have has been built by them. And they compete with each other, sometimes violently. And if you are a corporate mercenary, and most players are either corporate mercenaries, corporate spies, if they're not soldiers or pirates, sometimes you're literally at war with the neighboring corporation and their corporate mercenaries.
For now.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it may be different.
Yeah. Maybe a merger, a joint venture, where we have to shake hands for a minute. So, John, a bunch of different corporations with different goals, and the tendrils into politics, but it's mostly about profit. There are the wide range of scenarios / adventures you could make off of that, just from that aspect, is huge. I know you like the thought of episodic play, so that instead of a long campaign, you can have these small chunks that are all very valuable and kind of go through. I think this would lend really well to that type of thing. What do you think?
It definitely could. There's definitely a mission feel to things where you could have you come in, punch the clock. Okay, well, we need you to go to this planet. They've not been harvesting as much as they should of our resources. So, beat them into submission, whatever. And then you come back and punch the clock again or whatever. I think there's definitely some room for that. I also think there's so much depth in it. Y'all have been around, well, not y'all particularly, but the system has been around for 30 years. But looking through the book, there's so much depth that it could have been around for 50 years because there's so much. It's so well thought out that there's not a whole lot you couldn't do with it. And I know people say that about D&D, but I feel like D&D neglects a lot of things, and you guys have a better case for that. It's just not high fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, some of the depth that we even just skipped over here, just explaining the bigger picture. We have anarchists that are out there. We have rebels who are trying to fight to get the real truth out there because there's all these things that are put out by the government, but there's people questioning some of the things that are being put out there, saying, well, why are we even in this fight anyway? Why us? Why now? And there's something they're not telling us. So you've got that aspect of thing, and the government's trying to squelch that noise because, frankly, they just want to survive. Because there might be something out there that there might be an answer to something that you're trying to ask that we don't want to say right now. And if we survive, we may tell you the truth later, or maybe we won't. But you've got all that whole aspect of it. You've got anarchists who are just like, burn the whole thing down. There's too much capitalism, and they're just destroying the whole universe. Let's just burn it all down. You've got Uncle Ernie, who supports that effort by biologically engineering monstrosities to let loose for the best paying customers, and sometimes for fun.
Right.
Fun and profit.
Go ahead, Tony.
Tomorrow, actually, a group called Rook and Rasp is running the second actual play for Savage Battlelords. And to talk about your point of being episodic, they asked me, what kind of games do you guys usually run? And I said, if you're playing corporate mercenaries, it's different every time. I mean, it's Monday, maybe you're repelling the corporate installation from a pirate attack. It's Tuesday, you need to go over to the neighboring corporation and get the stuff back that their spies stole. It's Wednesday, the planet's being invaded by Arachnids. We need you to fend those guys off and get the population out. It's Thursday, Uncle Ernie dropped a horrible monstrosity on the city. Can you go help the civilians? I mean, it's
Friday. I know it was your day off, but I really need you to come in.
You go to work.
One of those
I know
things.
it's Sunday. You've been working doubles for the last 2 weeks, but this merc on our other team just snapped and he's running around shooting everybody. Can you just put him down?
Yeah.
One of the things I really liked and thought could lend itself well to the episodic thing is that there was a portion where it was like what you use to fight one species may not be what you use to fight another species. In fact, the Arachnids, and I forget the other species. Atlanteans. If you have equipped to fight the Arachnids and you find yourself in the midst of Atlanteans, you're just kind of fucked. So, what you gonna do?
With the Arachnids and their techno-organic hordes, you want weapons that can do a lot of damage and deal with a lot of opponents at the same time. If you're dealing with the Atlanteans, who are basically a cloud of nanites, they don't really care how many times you put a hole in them. They're not going to be impressed. So
right.
Being well equipped for one is potentially going to screw you if you run into the other one.
Definitely.
Right. So this is going right along my little timeline over here. I wanted to talk about the different types of enemies, the Arachnids and Atlanteans, and then I had a big arrow and a big font underline Uncle Ernie Freebag.
We're doing so good at staying on script.
Right. You
that
guys
didn't
are following
exist.
it So, Dave, you mentioned Uncle Ernie a minute ago. I need more. Give me more about Uncle Ernie because I love the character. I love the concept.
The good one.
Who loves you, baby?
Yeah.
Uncle Ernie.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
Find him.
So give us a little of the backstory and, how people who want to play this game can, utilize the Uncle Ernie lore into their game.
There's a whole bunch of lore in the prior edition, which would carry over just fine as just general lore. But the simple version is he is a crazy smart wicked smart biogeneticist who loves just tinkering. Well, what if I take a frog, add some bat wings, and make it sound like a puppet? Wait, puppet? Yeah, puppet. Let's just try to make that work. Okay. Has he been drinking?
Probably.
No. He just likes to create things, and whether those things kill things or not, yeah. But if it pays the bill, sure. Yeah, it kills things. Yeah. Oh, you don't want it to kill things? What do you want it to do? I can do the other.
Yeah, there's others.
There's lots of ways to play this game, sometimes like, this wasn't as lethal as I wanted. Let me just see if I can tweak it a little bit, set it loose on a world, see how it does. Watch the news, 50 deaths. I can do better than that. Let me try it again. 75 deaths this time. Getting closer. He got bit by a furball one time, and he wanted them eradicated as a species, but the Alliance protected them. And they had a world they picked out for one of the species to take over, and he decided to have a little bit of fun with that by genetically engineering one of the species called the Fot, placing them on that planet and giving them enough time to, because they're rabbit-based, they breed like rabbits and they grow quickly, and so all of a sudden there's this whole civilization that builds up very quickly that takes over a planet they already promised to a species. Like, what are you doing here? We just found this world 10 years ago. Why is there a whole civilization here?
So when I was reading through it, Uncle Ernie seemed like this really weird, cool mix of anarchist, opportunist, and
chaos, maybe?
Well, I was thinking this guy who's just slighted by something in the past and wants nothing but revenge for that. Sometimes you can chalk his motives and his actions up to just pure anarchy, but sometimes it's, well, those sons of bitches didn't give me the lunch I wanted that one day, and so I'm going to teach them. Right? It was a great character, and I could see him being behind a lot of the machinations throughout any of these adventures. So, how about it, Kurt?
I was going to say, we did for Classic Battlelords, we did a book called Charlie Foxtrot. And if you've been in the military, you kind of know what that means. One of those particular episodes, and it's basically like you guys were talking about earlier, it's got 5 or 6 different missions in it where you can play, and they're all different missions, but 2 of the missions are basically a mirror of each other, and both of them have a present from Uncle Ernie. He's testing out one of his latest and greatest creations on it. So it really leads into, like you were saying, a lot of different little things like, pest extermination. That could be a part of your corporate job. Or, you happen to be a pirate, and guess what? The place you're trying to ransack is, Ernie dropped some stuff off, and now you've got the pest eliminators, you've got the pests, and you've got all these people you're trying to rob. What do you do? It's all in a day.
Sounds like a party.
Or maybe you're a pirate and you're transporting them unknowingly, and then when you get boarded, all of a sudden they get let loose, and it's an all-mad scramble to try to survive. The monstrosities running through your ship and the police ship.
Yes, so...
You find you've done everything right, and at the very end, as you're about to enjoy your victory, you realize you've been a pawn for Uncle Ernie the whole time, and something terrible just happens somewhere, and you were the trigger he pulled to make it happen. That would be a blast. Yeah, fucked by Ernie again.
I just imagine like he sends you to go take something, and then on the ride there in your vehicle, like it all lets loose, and you go back and you're like, Ernie, it all came out and attacked us. And he's like, okay, but how did it do? He doesn't care about your personal well-being.
Right.
Yeah, how did you survive again? Takes notes.
Takes note.
Got it. Okay.
That won't happen again.
Say more about that. I can fix this. I'm sorry. Yes, this is good. Good job.
So
I got another delivery for you to make.
So how long has Uncle Ernie been around? Was he original Battlelords, or did he come in through one of the editions?
He's actually based off of one of the players who used to participate in Battlelords games with Larry. There is a real Ernie
Nice.
out
Those are
there.
great.
If you join our Facebook group, occasionally he makes an appearance.
We will do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to talk to Uncle Ernie. We do something very similar in our games with the Rick Stevens. He just kind of pops in
Yeah.
with a much less chaotic mission, but he still does a very similar thing. It kind of pushes things onto us or, aids us in some way, but much less chaos.
Much less powerful,
Right.
too. Ernie is... I imagine he's filthy rich by now.
Yeah, hundreds of billions of dollars in assets, and he uses them all to make horrible monstrosities that he releases for fun and profit.
All right, so in Savage Battlelords, as you're creating a character, right? So I mentioned earlier, the way you really round out the kind of character you want is by picking and choosing the right set of hindrances and edges. And one of the things I thought you did really well in this book is have species-specific hindrances. If you are a Scissorak, you are going to be... one of them, I think, is like, because of the paw nature of their hands, there were certain weapons that they couldn't use or whatever. So how... so that translation or transition from classic Battlelords to Savage Battlelords, how was that? And the figuring out to use, I believe by looking at it, every species had some hindrances that were associated with them. Is that true?
I believe so. Yeah. Fortunately, that's one of the things that Savage Worlds does really well, is basically different species and different monsters. So transferring the different Battlelord species over into Savage Battlelords or the Savage Worlds rule set, really I just focused on making sure that they were balanced. Essentially, any starting species you pick in Savage Battlelords is going to be about the equivalent of a seasoned character in regular Savage Worlds because of the species bonuses they get. Even with those edges they get, even with the hindrances they all have. And then when you're building that character, there are species-specific edges and hindrances that you can pick when you're building them and fleshing them out, in addition to a bunch of general edges and hindrances that you can get, some of which are also species-specific.
Like the Death Noogie.
The Death Noogie for the Ram Pythons.
What?
Okay, so
I don't know what that is.
You're going to have to flesh that one out
Yeah.
for me, Kurt,
So-
because
You can't just drop that like it's
can't leave
nothing.
that.
You're not going to
Yeah.
just pass by that.
Now, the Ram Pythons are the ones with the big mohawk.
Your 3 meter tall lizard equivalent. Kurt, go tell them what the Death Noogie is. Go ahead.
Gotta hear it.
So you got this 3 meter lizard that's about 1,200 kilos. So about a little over a half ton or a little over a ton, and they like to. They're known for doing several things to individuals that vex them, particularly humans. So one of them is they make a hand puppet of them, which they.
Okay.
Rah, 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 rah. This is what he do. He talking too much. Or the other
So
part
dark.
is they'll grab somebody basically in a headlock and then take their knuckles and rub the head until giving them a noogie, right? Well,
Mhm.
when you're that big and that strong and you have big scaly knuckles, the Death Noogie literally abrades the surface of the head if they don't accidentally squish it or pop it when they get you in the headlock. So
Yeah, a Ram Python can bench press a Ford F-150. So getting in a Death Noogie is bad.
Oh my god.
It's
So
a very
you're
literal
saying
term.
Dodge is better than Ford.
Yeah.
So, right, the one of the overarching themes that I hadn't really worked in here just worked itself in, and that's the dark humor, right? You So not only do you suggest the dark humor, go ahead, Dave.
So dark humor just showed up now. It didn't show up at the crawler or the hat box.
No, what I meant is I haven't hit on the dark humor aspect of it yet.
No, we definitely
It's been all
covered
through
it.
it.
It's been here.
But what I just thought is, so in the book, you suggest that trench warfare dark humor is not only a natural thing to kind of as a coping mechanism, but you ought to encourage it in your games, and enjoy it. But you've built some of it into the game, like just in case you guys aren't smart enough to add your own dark humor. Here's some from us.
Sometimes it builds
Hatbox,
itself.
Death Nuggies.
Human puppets. Just
So there's this, and I'm going to convert it for everybody. There's this 10-foot tall, 1,000-pound lizard man who has stuck his hand up the puppet. Are you picturing it?
yeah, I'm with you. But here's the thing: you're the puppet.
Right.
Yeah.
That's-
And he's elbow deep.
oh,
And can still work them out.
That's right.
It's big. All right. So are there any other of the hindrances or edges that you guys had to develop to get the Battlelords feel and aspects into a savage world setting? Are there any that off the top of your head you really enjoyed making, or you thought really helped bring the flavor into that set of mechanics?
There were. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Before Tony jumps in, I do want to tag back to something we said earlier. Like, we like wordplay, so I want to call out something really ingenious that Tony did with some of the edges. Tried to tie back into some of the existing Savage Worlds lore. So one of the ones that I like is 4-Gun Squid, which ties back to 2-Gun Kid.
4-Gun Squid. It's about time. I can't believe it took us this long to get to a rim shot.
I was getting overzealous with it. I wanted to give it a rest.
Yeah. It loses some of its meaning if you
Yeah.
overuse
there's
it.
diminishing returns.
All right, so Tony, I think you were going to talk a little bit about the edges or
Sure.
hindrances.
Because it's military sci-fi, we have a lot of military specific edges, but I think the ones that really model the Battlelords are some of the species specific ones, because it makes, it's about combat, but really it's about the role playing in the species too. So as Dave mentioned, we've got the 4-Gun Squid for the Fintari, who are these 4 tentacled squid creatures. The Orions, who are pop culture species, they have a species trait where they just laugh whenever they're stressed out, maniacally laugh for no reason. And so there are some edges that they can get that key into that. They can use it to either laugh their way out of danger, and so they ignore the combat stress table as a coping mechanism, or to unhinge their opponent, who's like, why is he laughing like that? That's really disturbing.
That was really fun to watch in the actual play, by the way. It's
The
a
Orion.
really cool aspect of the Orion.
You've got the Eridani, who are essentially like samurai-like aliens. They're feudal and militaristic, and they have a whole set of edges for their martial abilities that you can model their sword styles and their different martial arts. There are species-specific edges for pretty much every species in the game, and some of them model the setting, some of them help with that military sci-fi aspect of them, and some of them are that dark humor element to them.
And it's a little wacky sometimes, like Jackalope.
I
Yes.
saw that one. That was hilarious.
What is it?
So there's what's the name of the bunny race?
The Fot.
The Fot.
So
There's a
imagine that
Right?
with deer horns.
A jackal.
A jackalope.
I'm with you.
One of Uncle Ernie's most famous creations,
Because
the jackal.
the Fots are all genetically buried in their genetics. So there's a gene running around that might pop up that gives that bunny antlers,
Horns.
That's badass.
which serve as a natural weapon. You're proficient
Right.
with them. There's rules for using horns in combat. It's
That's
like
perfection.
perfect.
I love that.
So you try to put on a helmet.
Yeah, it
and
makes
you're
helmet shopping a bitch.
It's fair. But also hitting me on the head is going to be a lot harder for you. You're going to get caught up in an antler.
Right. But helmet shopping is, I mean, that's like foundational, critical in this game, right? Since don't lose your head.
Right.
Exactly.
don't lose your head.
No, well, then you need neck armor.
A gorget.
Neck armor right after helmet. Right?
Right.
Are there any vampires in your game?
Yeah.
Vampire species?
They are in classic Battlelords, and eventually we may port them over. There's a species called the Andromedai, they're an energy, basically an energy cloud, an energy being, and to interact with non-energy beings, they inhabit dead bodies.
Nice.
It's pretty legit.
They
So
animate them.
there may well be a reason for me
For
to
neck
run
armor.
out to purchase neck armor.
Get your neck armor.
That's right.
What is wrong with you?
He has no sense of when the wah-wah and the rim shot. I really felt like that one was.
I'm going to make him move the soundboard between us so that I can be in charge of it.
Hey, so what's in store?
What's next?
We know there's probably a Kickstarter coming to get the printed copy of the book out. We will be first in line to pledge that Kickstarter. But tell us what the road ahead looks like. What's on the horizon for Battlelords?
So in the next 30 days, we will be launching the Kickstarter for Savage Battlelords. There are 3 Savage Battlelords books essentially done. They are ready to go. We have the core rules. We have the Carnage Companion, which is sort of like a player's handbook. And we have the Alliance Setting Guide, which in addition to detailing the setting also functions as sort of a GM handbook as well. All of those are written, ready to go. Dave's been editing them. So if the way Kickstarter is set up, if we fund, the core rules are funded, and then if we hit like the next stretch goal up, that funds the Carnage Companion, and then the next one after that will be the Alliance Setting Guide. In addition, we'll have things like Battlelords themed poker chips for counting bennies and Battlelords themed playing cards, because you can't play Savage Worlds without a deck of cards.
Exactly.
And the nice thing about having all those books written is if the Kickstarter funds, within 2 weeks, everybody's going to have those PDFs to look through. And what we typically do is, while we're waiting to get the book ready to print, we're taking feedback from people who have received the PDFs. And if they say this is an error or we think this
Has
needs to be
Dave
changed,
missed anything? Way to go, Dave.
then we're making those changes.
That's awesome.
It's a lot of material to read. I cut Dave some flack. I think between each book is under 200 pages, but together there's about 550, 600 pages of material.
That's a lot. There's a lot of content in the PDF version that you guys let us take a sneak peek at in order to do this. Beautiful art. Don's been doing a really good job of flipping through and showing some of the great art that's in your work as we've been talking, so everybody out there can see it either on this stream or this will be up video on demand on YouTube in a few days. So we'll continue to push people out there to look at it so they can see your stuff. Yeah. So how about any? I have this little big page of notes, and we were all over this discussion, and I'm looking over, and there's things I know I should have spent more time, or I completely forgot to talk about this. So I'd just like to give each of you a chance. If there's something about the game or the setting or what you guys got going on that we didn't do a good job of hitting on or asking you a question, I'm going to give you a free rein to answer the question I should have asked. So I'm going to just go what's left or right on my screen. So, Dave, parting shots.
And I think we've covered the ground pretty well. I mean, if people haven't figured out by now that we've got a dark humor aspect and really trying to get people playing together and working together to solve the problems. That's kind of the big thing. My biggest recommendation for people looking at Battlelords is just kind of get an agreement amongst the team as to what the general theme is, because that's the biggest thing. There's so many different ways of playing the game You just kind of got to get everybody. Are we going to be mercenaries together? Are we going to be soldiers together? Are we going to be, kind of a Mission Impossible team together, pirates, explorers, whatever that is that the group's interested in, do it. You can do just about anything. Like one team they're doing stuff as mercenaries, and they got a hold of a ship and they turned it into a cruise liner, and it got trained after that. They ran a cruise line for a while. It was like, yeah, I don't know how we ended up here, but that's fine. So run it the way you want to run it. Have fun.
Absolutely. Tony.
I would encourage people to download the Quickstart rules. We have free Quickstart rules for Classic Battlelords and Savage Battlelords. As you mentioned, we like the art. We think is great. I describe it as art book as well as game book. You can download a free interior preview of Battlelords art on Drive-Thru RPG and check out the artwork if you'd like to look at it. And for the Savage Worlds players, I think I would just tell them that, how we market it is bringing armored infantry combat to Savage Worlds. I don't think anybody's really done that, certainly not the way we have. And it's modular enough that if you want to take the armor and weapons aspects out of Battlelords and use them in other Savage Worlds settings, you can do that.
And I'll tag on to that because of the work that Tony did and working with some players that really know the Savage Worlds rules. Really, there's not a lot of custom rules. It's really pretty much out of the box Savage Worlds with a few tweaks here and there is probably the better way to describe it. Is that fair, Tony?
Yeah, we tried to utilize existing rules whenever we could to keep that learning curve pretty low, and I hopefully we've accomplished that.
Kurt, pardon shots from you.
All right. Well, just to let you know that we've got a lot of irons in the fire. So we're not only with the Savage Worlds, but we're, like I said, we're getting ready to send out and send off to print Fully Armored, which is our classic Battlelords armor and gear manual. Next, after we get through with these, we're looking at doing things like the Alliance, the ARM Summer Catalog, which is, basically monsters from Uncle Ernie or, items that have been found on planets that you really don't want to play with. Be like having a tiger at your house, or the boar beast of Blethar 4, little thing that'll drill into your leg through your armor. You don't really want to play with it.
But if you'd like to, there's a catalog you can order.
Exactly.
You do you.
So basically, so you're not just fighting mercenaries and stuff along those lines too. The other thing we're doing a lot of is we're trying to put out a fairly regular, small, like 40-page book, a PDF. We've got several different thoughts on those, but right now we're putting them in as Warmonger's Guide. The first one's already been out. Kind of gives you more background and story on Battlelords and just the setting and that. And I believe the next one that we're going to be doing is mostly based off of medals, things that you can get in the Alliance, the military, and the corporate world. So it just kind of adds more detail to an already exhaustive list of detail that we have for the setting. So I can keep an eye out for that kind of stuff because we do plan on doing that as well as more vehicles and spaceships. And we are also talking about like a book of archetypes, ready-made player characters that you can get and make your own. So all those are kind of things that are on our list of things we want to do and plan on doing. So keep an eye out. Come back often.
We will. So Emily, any last thoughts or questions?
No questions. I'm very excited. I love anything that comes out with a ton of literature and extra bits on the side that you can get into and really dig into the world. I very much so like that it mirrors a lot of the things that I enjoy. Like we were talking about The Fifth Element and a few other movies that I'm really into. There's a little bit of Ghost in the Shell in there with the body augmentation and the cybernetics and all that stuff. Very cool system. Very much excited about it. And anything with dark humor, it's really great.
Bunnies doesn't hurt either.
Bunnies don't hurt. I love bunnies. I do. And fluffy. Deadly and fluffy. The best.
Any for your thoughts? Like, he was a little slow on that one. I had to give him the
My
cue.
bad.
He had to give him the look of, so
I
help
took
me
my
God, do the
finger
rim
away
shot.
after the last.
All right, John, comments, parting thoughts, anything?
I think it's really cool that there's a Savage Worlds version. So if you're thinking about it and you're like, it seems kind of complicated, you can get in the Savage Worlds version a little bit easier.
More accessible.
Because, like, we have a backlog of games at this point, and the Savage Worlds version will give us a step up, and then once we get in and play it and find out, hey, this is really cool, it's much more likely that we'll take that next step and go into classic Battlelords and sort of a gateway drug.
Yeah, Savage World is a gateway drug, basically. What are your final thoughts?
Hey, thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
Um,
Come on.
my initial final thought is we've got to take that thing away from
Right.
John. No, I'm going to kind of build on something that Tony said. If there are parts of it you like, it's so modular, you could like grab that out and take it to another game. One of the things that I noticed as I was reading through the Quickstart is that you can make this game as crunchy as you would like, or you can dial it down. So as I was reading through it, and this is typically the way I read through things, I start imagining the first game I would play of it. What would this scenario be? What would we be doing? And as I was reading it, I realized that, I could, the first time, I could leave the matrices powers. I could leave that out for right now so that we could all get a feel and a handle for things. I could, like, hey, we're gonna take some smaller damaged weapons and just basic armor to start off with, so we get a feel for how the game runs, and then we'll add the absorption armor and the really bad boys in there. Excuse me. So that was one of the things I noticed as I was reading through it, that it's you can really set the thermostat where you want, and start low, get that comfort level, and then start dialing it up to your desired level of crunchy.
And as a dad, you're the only one allowed to touch the thermostat, right?
That's right.
Sorry.
So I've got a frog in my throat. We're at an hour and a half. We've talked about everything we could possibly talk about. Absolutely encourage everybody to pick up the Quickstart. It's wonderfully written, wonderfully done, and it's a great gateway into the gateway that is the Savage Worlds edition. So thank you guys for joining us today. We've had a blast talking to you about it and nerding out. And I know sometimes it seemed like we were interviewing ourselves as much as you, but we just enjoy geeking out and talking about this kind of stuff. So thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having us on.
Great.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining us. Remember, you can find us right here 6 to 8 on Monday nights and Thursday nights. We do actual play most of the time on Thursday nights, and something else on Monday nights. So come back and join us. Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Don't forget to download the Quickstart. Sign up for the mailing list if you want to learn about the Kickstarter
Link
and
in
the
the
description.
And join their Facebook page.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those things. All right, bye again.
Bye.